I have never been to Namibia before, and arriving at Windhoek on one of the country's international flights, I was looking forward with great expectation to the weeks ahead. The first thing that struck me, particularly having visited many countries throughout the world, was how friendly, informal, yet efficient it was to go through customs. I had a strong feeling I was going to like this place. The reason for my visit was quite simple. I'd been invited by some friends of mine to join them on their travels and give my impressions of the sights and sounds of where they went. So here I was in a new world, arriving by coach to my first port of call, the modern and impressively sophisticated Safari Hotel. There was no doubt about it. This hotel, situated on the outskirts of Windhoek, has done everything to ensure that guests are really well looked after. The accommodation certainly matched that to be found anywhere in the world. Downstairs, the same informal and friendly service that I had come across at the airport was very much prevalent. Already I noticed a distinct European style to the public service rooms. It was even more unusual to hear a waiter speak perfect German as he served breakfast in one of the guest rooms. The hotel even provides a courtesy bus service to and from Windhoek, and this trip afforded me the first real opportunity of looking at this fascinating and charming colonial city with its contrasts of dynamic new and gracious old buildings. As we were shortly to be leaving on the first part of our journey, it was necessary to stock up on provisions. I guess that I hadn't expected to see such a wide selection of fruits and vegetables, while the meat counters were positively overflowing with a terrific selection of meats, some being most definitely continental, others quite obviously local game. In fact, this traditional, more particularly German influence was even more pronounced when I saw the enormous selection of breads and those internationally famous cakes. I also came across plenty of healthcare items, so necessary to combat the hot Namibian sun. I'd been to other parts of Africa before, but it was quite apparent that Namibia caters for its people and its visitors in great style, offering the best of standards and the widest range of products. Before any trip into Namibia, it's also wise to be kitted out correctly, and Ernst Holt's Safari Outfitters were able to provide me with a good selection of recommended clothing. We were going to return to Windhoek, and I was looking forward to exploring it in more detail. However, we were now leaving on the first part of our expedition. My friends had arranged to go east into the bushveld before traveling south into the immense wilderness, often referred to as a land of unrelenting sun. Little did I realize what this meant. We were making for a guest farm some 3 hours away from Windhoek, and it wasn't long before the scenery changed into the dense vegetation of bushveld, giving me my first sight of some of the plains game to be found in this part of the country. The Hitaku Guest Farm runs its own bus service for guests. I imagine the first-time visitors must be as impressed as I was. The guest farm is impressive by any standards. The owner has appointed a husband and wife team to look after the guests, and I can only say that we were made heartily welcome. Although I found it quite an irony to find such luxury seemingly in the middle of nowhere, I was only too pleased to be staying there. For the lover of wildlife, Hitaku Guest Farm provides opportunities for game viewing and also has rest lodges so that guests can take a break during the day's activities and literally relax in that special way. I can only describe the scenery of the desert lands in the Southwest as awesome. From sun-bronzed hills to wide-open plains shimmering in the heat. People have said that this is the land that God made in anger. To me, it appeared as though he may have just wanted to create the drama of desolation. This, then, was the arid wilderness of the Namib Desert, of which I had heard so much about. I could also see why it was that if you wanted to tour this country, a 4x4 was by far the best vehicle one could hire. Suddenly, we reached the Sesrine Canyon, which appeared from nowhere, revealing a scar across the land with unexpected but life-giving water. Wherever we came across the odd tree, invariably it would be shade to a family of buck who would look at us almost accusingly before scuttling away to apparent safety. We were making toward Sesrine, a campsite in the center of this immense wilderness. The camp had all the necessary facilities to make us stay comfortable. But for me, the delight was in meeting other campers who were on a Namib wilderness safari tour. Needless to say, it wasn't long before we were joining them at the campfires and making friends in typical Namibian fashion. The desert sands in nearby Sossusvlei is home to one major species, the gemsbok. It has adapted itself to live in this ever-changing climate, which offers little protection as winds suddenly whip up, creating windstorms of stinging sand. As these storms raged, I was glad we had a sturdy vehicle as we drove on, the sun hidden, the light creating an impression that we were traveling on a lunar landscape. The storm abated as suddenly as it had started, and the aftermath was an eerie silence as the sun reappeared, showering rays of light across the breathtaking, striking dunes. A small herd of gemsbok had found a little sustenance before moving on. Everywhere we looked, there were sights of harsh beauty. Yet I was pleased to see that there were others who wished to experience this solitude. The sand dunes in the Namib are the highest dunes to be found in any desert in the world. In the Hottentot language, the name Namib means thirst land, an arid wilderness. The dunes are spectacularly beautiful, treacherous shifting sands of immense proportions. Because of this rare elegance, the area is protected, becoming a unique desert park. The contrasts to the desert which we found in the Naukluft Park was almost confusing. Here were harsh, jagged, rocky outcrops where crystal clear water fell gently toward the bottom, creating a myriad of pools. This area is home to many small game, including mountain zebra. The Bergsdorf Guest Farm has spectacular views across the plains to the area we had just visited. The guest farm is an old converted police station and prison, and the husband and wife team offered old-fashioned, comfortable hospitality. This is a working farm, and it's an early start for the farm team to get into the country to tend the sheep, caracals, who are reared especially for their fleeces. As we moved on, we would suddenly see a tour coach appear, passing us and disappearing from view in the endless distance. Our next stopover was at Hardap, the largest dam in Namibia, covering some 25 square kilometers. For the water sport enthusiasts or fishermen, Hardup Dam is the place to be. The resort, which has been developed, stands proudly on the end of a promontory jutting out into the water. Moving further south, we then stayed at the Canyon Hotel in Keetmanshoop, where we were able to freshen up and take advantage of one of the hotel's renowned buffets. As the Oryx coach group departed, I was to learn that these coach tours are a popular way of touring Namibia, the operators being extremely knowledgeable about their country. Keetmanshoop has retained much of its original German atmosphere. Many of the buildings were designed in German style with thick walls and ceilings, protection against the scorching heat. The architecture, so typically German, is a fine legacy to its colonial past, and perhaps the old steam locomotive was one of the first used on the railway system, which was developed at the end of the 19th century. The Fish River Canyon, one of the natural wonders of Africa, second only in size to the Grand Canyon of America. 161 kilometers long and up to 27 kilometers broad, the Great Fish River meanders some 550 meters below through this gigantic canyon. It was great scenic drama for me. I could only stand and wonder on its creation, an inviolate monument to nature. On the floor of the Fish River Canyon, I was taken to I's Hot Water Spring Resort. I learned that due to the phenomenally high temperatures experienced here during the summer months, the resort is actually closed to the public. Nevertheless, the resort certainly has plenty of facilities, and despite the heat, the warm spa waters were wonderfully refreshing. The final destination on our journey was to visit Luderitz, lying on the desert coast of Namibia. Originally discovered in the 15th century by the Portuguese explorer Bartholomew Dias, the area was not developed due to the scarcity of fresh water until the late 19th century, when Adolf Luderitz established a trading store on the shores of the bay. The town rapidly grew, and some fabulous examples of colonial architecture remain, making this town exceedingly unique. Today, the major industry is that of fishing, with pilchards and rock lobsters being some of the major catches. In fact, the restaurant in the Strand Hotel has become famous for its seafood specialties. The memory of Dias, however, lives on, a cross overlooking this beautiful rugged coastline. The buildings from the days of the German Empire dominate the sights of the town, and were it not for the searing heat, it would be almost possible to transport myself backward in time to imagine living in a different era. There is sand everywhere, drifting over the roads, creating new hazards each day. Once headquarters of the diamond industry with a thriving community of over 700 families, Keetmanshoop is now just a series of derelict houses, battered by thundering winds and shifting sands. As I went inside some of the houses, I had a strange feeling, as though I was invading a past privacy, a most disturbing sensation. In the recreation hall, I could almost hear the clinking of glasses full of good German beer, and thick, heavy accents, the air full of coarse tobacco. But in real terms, all that remain are the walls, the sand slowly burying the memories, laying them silently to rest. Even more haunting an experience was the ghost town of Elizabeth Bay. What remains of the past are the strange shapes carved by the elements. Gaping holes gives this town an almost precarious state. I got the feeling that should any one of these buildings collapse, it would not be with a resounding bang, but rather a sigh and a whimper, crumbling unprotestingly to become part of that which destroyed it in the first place, the very sand itself. While a couple of members of our group drove back, I decided to fly back to Windhoek with the others. It was a pleasure to find that Namib Air has scheduled internal flights throughout the country. The second visit gave me the opportunity of looking at the city in more depth. Windhoek is a delightful city, situated some 1,686 meters above sea level. Since independence in 1990, the city has also seen some massive building developments. Corporate finance houses have invested in Namibia, reflecting their commitment to the success of this new country. Furthermore, city center developments by way of shopping malls and complexes are contributing to the general upliftment and betterment of all this country's peoples. I was intrigued to find that banking in Namibia is sophisticated, utilizing the best of international banking technology. Foreign exchange desks with well-trained personnel are fully equipped to handle all the various complex procedures in dealing with clients' problems and needs. For the overseas tourist visiting this country, the banking infrastructure with its friendly and helpful staff ensure the dealings are efficient and pleasurable. Foreign and business investments are important, and the Commercial Bank of Namibia has strong relations with the international banking fraternity, including the Dresdner Bank in Germany. And whether you're in Namibia for business or for pleasure, internationally recognized credit cards or traveler's checks are accepted. The Windhoek Photo Studio was able to provide the very best in international equipment and was also able to look after my processing and printing needs for the photos I had taken to date, while a local chemist was able to completely refurbish our first aid kit. Seeing a Koop wall clock being assembled was a big surprise, although Burke's watchmakers are also involved in highly sophisticated timepieces. The German passion for chocolates is also present in Windhoek. At the Springer Chocolate Factory, I was invited to a guided tour around the factory, which included seeing the actual chocolate manufacturing process right through the assembly line to final packaging. Having visited chocolate factories elsewhere in the world, I was most impressed not only in the modern process being used, but also in the fabulous range of chocolates being provided. As we were going to be cooking a lot of our own food on the second half of the journey, we decided to visit Hartleaf's meat products to see what we could get. Scrupulous cleanliness and only excellent quality meats being used, whether it was cattle or some of the more exotic game products. We had our meats vacuum packed to be packed away in our freezer boxes, all frozen together. Bottled beer, using the most modern technology, is brewed according to German tradition. And in a country as hot as Namibia, it's not surprising that Namibian breweries is a major industry in Windhoek. The whole warehousing process is most sophisticated, and due to the enormous distances involved in distribution, the breweries have a formidable fleet of trucks to ensure that even the smallest community is serviced. However, the past few weeks had taught me that Namibian roads take their toll on vehicles, and expert maintenance and repair must be available. Zemmerman's Garage has a proud reputation, ensuring that vehicles are kept on the road. The next part of our journey was to be split in two. Firstly, we were going to the northwest of Namibia, that is, Damaraland, Kaukaland, and the Skeleton Coast. The second stage was to visit Etasha and Kavango before returning to Windhoek. At Achisemba, we met the charming couple Stefan and Kathleen Klein. Stefan kindly took us around his farm, showing me some of the game. So much of this wildlife has been captured for posterity by Bushmen. I was told that I would be seeing some of the finest examples of Bushman art on this part of the journey. There was no doubt in my mind that the need to conserve wildlife should be one of the priorities of any society. As we stopped off at different places along the road, I could only marvel at nature's innocence and reflect on how important it is that it remain in the future, no matter how small or how large. What a delightful place the Achisemba guest farm turned out to be. The accommodation was truly excellent. It seemed as though everything provided had been done with one thing in mind: comfort and relaxation. A spectacular sunset complemented this lovely guest farm. And of course, the hospitality was, as always, traditional Namibian, friendly, welcoming, complete with braai or barbecue, and the opportunity of meeting and making friends with fellow travelers. Bushman paintings can be found throughout this northern mountain area, and some of the best known are in the Brandberg. Not only is this area quite unique in its own right, its fame is due to the most famous single rock painting in Africa, the White Lady of the Brandberg. This mysterious painting has been subject to much debate regarding its meaning and origin. It remains aloof to the controversy, a strange image from the past. Nearby Twyfelfontein is also host to many rock engravings. In fact, there is a concentration of around 3,000 engravings and paintings, authors unknown, from an era that no one really knows. Not far away from this remarkable collection, and nearby close to Corikas, there lies a petrified forest. Speculation persists, but there are indications that the various species of trees never grew there, but in fact were driftwood, dumped when the sea penetrated far inland. Leaving the land of uniquely sculptured rocks behind us, we were soon entering another strange landscape, a strange oasis, habitat of the desert elephant. Whether it be for photographer or tourist, there is probably no mightier sight than that of the African elephant. His only enemy? Man. None of us realized it at the time, but we were going to see many more elephant before our expedition was completed. As temperatures began to soar, we came across more craggy rock faces hiding their secret caches of water. Yet, even water can be a home, and the water beetles are as important to the ecological balance as the largest of mammals. Palmbach Lodge was indeed a welcome sight as we traveled further north. A very casual stopover, Palmbach offers the weary traveler a true experience. Here, there are no pressures of the city. It's a place where you can put all that behind you. No time to waste. We were soon on our way again. Only cliffs protecting us from the Namib Desert. When you come across water, you take advantage of it. It took no second bidding for my friends to do just that. Considering the searing heat of the day, the water was remarkably cold and refreshing. In colonizing Southwest Africa, as it was then, the Germans had established a series of forts throughout the country. To come across this old fort was so unlikely that I couldn't help but express my astonishment. I realized then that the rich history to be found within Namibia was far greater than I had even considered. Date palms, German forts, what next? An Ovahimba tribe was next. These are the people of the Cauca land, eking out a precious living in the sand country of the north. It was also time for us to pitch camp and call it a day. Despite my friends and my expectation to a braai in the bush, I was experiencing something very unique, feelings I would never find elsewhere. Nearby was a Himba grave, recognized by the cow skulls on the tree. The more skulls higher up the tree, the more important the person. With precious few signposts, it was not surprising that we got lost. Coming across some Himba women, we asked them for directions. They tried to help us, but in real terms, neither of us understood each other. Fortunately, one of our companions had been on a Southern Cross safari tour in this area and thought he knew the road. What he didn't tell us was that there actually was no road, and it looked to me that one could hardly call it a track. This was Van Zales Pass, an extremely hazardous trip across the hills. Now I understood the need for two vehicles. Had we been only one and broken down, I shudder to think how one would have resolved that situation. However, once my initial trepidation had subsided, I could sense the challenge and began to enjoy the adventure. Over the top, we found ourselves driving across the valley floor, looked down on by an unusual but spectacular range of mountains. We were traveling along the basin of the Marion River Valley. My friends had seen it before, but I asked them to stop and watch a young Himba boy on his donkey. He appeared as if from nowhere, and I certainly couldn't imagine where he was going to. The Kunini River is the divide between Namibia and Angola. This perhaps had been the scene of a recent and tragic past. Today, it is serene, a glorious Africa, patient and forgiving. We were again on our way across the Namib to the Skeleton Coast. The contrast between what I had seen so far and this desert-meeting ocean was stunning. Here at Terrace Bay, the tourist camp was almost empty, and I couldn't help but agree with the words uttered by Aristotle Onassis when he visited the area. What magnificent solitude. The camp itself was developed by and is now run by the Namibian Department of Nature Conservation. The coastline is known as the Skeleton Coast because castaways from ships wrecked here stood little or no chance of surviving. Ironically, we stumbled across a small gorge cutting into the earth, creating rivulets of water ending in small muddy pools. Yet the unfortunates who may have escaped the fate of the boats stood little chance of survival. The coast is one of scorching heat, no shelter, and vast desolation. The Cape Cross Seal Rookery is, however, a pleasure to view. Sleek and beautiful, the seals are both playful and friendly. Discovered by the Portuguese explorer Diego Cao in the 15th century, a cross has been erected to commemorate his discovery, and the colony is a popular tourist venue, although it is strictly controlled. But now, we were off to have some fun. Swakopmund is the holiday playground of Namibia, and in the summer, the town becomes packed with visitors from all over the country, and all sorts of water sports abound. And the wide-open beaches encourage everyone to participate in the carefree holiday spirit that prevails. Street cafes reinforce the town's European influence. Although originally Swakop, as the town is commonly referred to, was developed as a port, it no longer fulfills this function. Nevertheless, there are some outstanding examples of colonial architecture. The Europahof is an outstanding example of the accommodation available in Swakopmund. The Strand Hotel on the seafront not only offers quality and comfort, most rooms have a sea view. And when the sun sets, you get that Namibian magic. Named after the Austrian discoverer of the plant, the Welwitschia is in real terms a dwarf tree, feeding from moisture provided by dew or mist. This extraordinary tree sends its taproot as deep as 20 meters, but it takes as long as 20 years before it produces its first flower. The lifespan of the tree has been estimated at about 1,000 years. Namibia continued to surprise me. One company specializes in tours of the Skeleton Coast. Gloriosa Tours offer their guests a wide range of activities, one of which is camping in the middle of the desert. The small party we came across had found this a soul-searching experience, but they had thoroughly enjoyed the loneliness of it all and had no hesitation in recommending me to do the same. The Ahmad Guest Farm is situated in one of the most delightful of settings. Owned by a single lady, she has developed a small game farm, which include 2 very tame but cheeky warthogs. There was also the magnificent feline prowess of a cheetah. The 2 baby elephants seem to be in their element. On the grounds of the farm, there are some massive rounded boulders known, for a reason I was unable to fathom, as the Bull Party. This had been a most enjoyable visit to this most charming of guest farms, complemented by coming across Bushman paintings. Beau Geste in Africa? I just couldn't believe it. But there it was, a glistening white fort standing proud in the heart of the northern wilderness. Fort Namutoni is a perfectly preserved example of the colonial history of Namibia. Today, the fort has become a great tourist resort. Caravan and camping facilities have been developed and proved very popular. But there was no way I was not going to stay in the fort, which I not only found very comfortable, but in reality appealed to my romantic nature. The spacious restaurant I found boasted an excellent cuisine. All in all, Namutoni Fort proved to be a rather unexpected interlude for me. On the west side of Etosha is the haunted forest of moringa trees. Upside-down trees which Bushmen believe were thrown out of heaven and landed upside down on earth. This is the largest moringa forest in Namibia, the only country in the world where the tree is known to grow. Etosha National Park has to be one of the greatest wildlife reserves in the world, dominated by the huge pan to the east of the park, where given time, it is possible to view an abundance of wild game. With temperatures high, even the shy and timid need no second invitation to get to the water. And yet there is always the silent threat of danger. And once recognized, there is really only one course of action to take. The Okaquiu may not have the grandeur of the Namutoni Fort, but accommodation is very luxurious all the same. Facilities are excellent, and the camp itself has been beautifully set out to keep in place with the environment. SWA safaris are known for their outstanding game viewing safaris, specializing in Etosha and magnificent game viewing. As always, the magnificent elephant. The average adult male stands about 3.2 meters at the shoulder, with a lifespan of about 80 years. Although the African elephant can be tamed by man, he is far more excitable and unpredictable than his more docile Asian counterpart. The third camp run by Nature Conservation in Etosha is Halali, which also offers good practical accommodation. I also learned that it was possible to charter private aircraft, and the airports at Etosha and Makuti were kept very busy. All this led me to thinking that my next visit to Namibia might entail an aerial adventure. The Oryx safari coaches seemed to be everywhere. I had no doubt that their guests were getting the best possible service and sights. The Makuti Lodge is one of the most luxurious camps in Namibia. Set in beautiful surroundings, it was quite evident that no expense had been spared to ensure that guests had the very best. And where, after a tiring day, you can return to enjoy style and sophistication. None of us could resist the opportunity to relax and take advantage of the outstanding facilities. Some even had the audacity to allow themselves to be fully pampered. Once I had relaxed, however, I couldn't wait to go on Namib Wilderness Safari. By this time, I realized that Namibia had really seduced me. Others decided to watch the game in the protected area of Mokuti Lodge. The wildlife viewing was simply outstanding. There were the ungainly sloping gait of the hartebeest, the graceful symmetry of the giraffe, the shy and timid zebra, and yet again, the elephant. This time in a herd, perhaps exercising their social responsibility by keeping together, looking after their community. There was the mighty lion, lazy but threatening. Was he waiting for his food to be brought to him? The more I saw, the more I was lost for words. But sights indelibly imprinted in my mind. Mokuti Lodge did themselves proud that night, although they told me it was no different to any other night. Luxury and sophistication in the heart of the bush. Everything seemed so worthwhile. Bushmen, one of man's oldest civilizations, living and behaving as thousands of generations before them. Curious rituals and the strange clicking sounds as they talked both combined to deceive me. And yet, I knew that this apparent simplicity had given us rock paintings and engravings. Who was fooling whom? Music is a dominant form of communication, we're led to believe, with myths and legends being handed down from tribe to tribe. A variety of handmade instruments seem to express the moods and nuances. When preparing his weapons for hunting, great care is taken, from honing and sharpening the arrowhead to the selection and flighting of the arrow itself. The bushman does not believe in ownership, hunting only what he needs. His hunting skills are legendary. At one with his environment, the bushmen are famous for their tracking skills. And once the prey is located, stealth and accuracy is applied to ensure that the game is taken cleanly for food. Other foods are roots, and also the fruit of the baobab tree. Food preparation is very much the preserve of the older women, who ensure that the whole family get fed. The younger ones often play games through song. The Bushman ornaments have long been associated with ostrich eggshells. The process of making the beads seemed from my uneducated eyes that it could hardly have changed or developed over the centuries. Unfortunately, there is an increasing westernization of the Bushmen. Young girls wearing brilliant colors and wood carving skills being used to make gifts to satisfy the needs of the curious outsider. Identification with Western dress styles has also increased dramatically. Ultimately, perhaps it will be only the baobab tree which will not be affected by change. The summer storms, when they arrive, are both violent and dramatic. Roads, which prior to the rains could be negotiated quite easily, suddenly demanded total concentration, the 4x4 proving its worth in a totally different fashion. No longer were we able to estimate how long it would take to get from one place to another. It was just a matter of being patient, eyes on the road. We finally reached Kowdoon Park Camp. Despite the strain of the drive, it was not long before we had a braai going, and while waiting for the meal to cook, we were able to relax and enjoy the hues and shades of the late afternoon sky. The meat, which had been so well frozen, was absolutely exceptional, and we were all drooling in anticipation, particularly when we pulled out one of Heartleaf's specialties, kebabs, but known locally as sosatis. As I came to realize, there is nothing better than being in the middle of the African bush, exchanging stories, sharing comradeship with your friends. We were now making for the sliver of land between Angola and Botswana, the Caprivi Strip. The Okavango River, flowing from the highlands, tumbles over a series of rapids at Pupa Falls. We decided to take a small hike through the bush and found ourselves at a small stream, obviously a tributary of the Okavango. Across the stream, elephant were dusting themselves, a part of their washing ritual. The Popa Fall Camp is a great stopping-off point. Game drives are very popular, but it pays to drive with care and attention. This is indeed the kingdom of animals. Here, it is necessary to respect their space. Here, it is necessary to acknowledge that we are the intruders. At Lianshulu Lodge, further into the Caprivi, we were accommodated in cool, comfortable, and spacious rooms. The bungalows overlook the river, and the lounge bar is a popular meeting place at the end of the day. From the bar, it is possible to see the river, and one evening we decided to take a cruise. Conviviality and friendship are what these casual cruises are all about, and the magnificent views from the river. It could be just the marvelous sunsets, even a flock of birds returning home at day's end. More than possibly, a view of hippo. And as I said, We just kept on seeing elephants. Not that I was in the least bit upset. In fact, as we traveled further into the strip, we came across a young Caprivian selling his carvings by the side of the road. His wood carving skills were fantastic, and he was prepared to show us the different steps he took to make a finished elephant. I was amazed at how primitive his tools were, yet the finished products were absolutely superb. Our next destination was the Zambezi Lodge. The lodge is most luxurious and is often used by tourists on the way to and from Victoria Falls. The hotel facilities are superb, and we were all only too glad to spend an afternoon around the pool, particularly in the sapping heat of this dense bushveld area. Owned by the lodge, the Zambezi Queen is a luxury riverboat which offers multi-package cruises up and down the Zambezi River. The lounge and bar is intimate and beautifully decorated, while the bedrooms run from luxurious to five-star suites. I was most impressed with Namibia with its service throughout the country, particularly to those areas to which people did not necessarily want to drive. Connecting flights are good, flight standards of the highest quality. We were now on our last lap, stopping to look at an Okavango family where the girls were milling corn and the father was carving a mask. I subsequently learned that the faces of these masks have not changed in centuries, and in fact have become famous. Some 6 hours later, we arrived at Ochivarongo and stopped at the Hamburger Hof, where we had a most enjoyable lunch. The game at the Waterberg Park boasts the unique and famous roan. The game park itself and the luxury bungalows, which can be seen from the plateau, have all been recently developed. The views from the plateau are simply breathtaking, and the park environment itself is wonderfully serene. The restaurant, which is a converted police station, has a gracious atmosphere and an excellent fare. Traveling further south, we soon arrived at Ochiva Game Ranch. Family accommodation with well laid out lawns and facilities make this ranch popular with windhoekers for weekend breaks. The game park itself is typical savanna and boasts a wide range of game, including the more rare white rhino. We'd made it. 10 weeks of traveling around this magnificent country, and now it was a few more days in Windhoek before I departed. We spent some time in the Turingerhof Beer Garden. Those last few days were based at the Kalahari Sands Hotel, giving me the chance to acclimatize to the way of life to which I was returning. The hotel had all that I needed to put myself back into shape. Although I had bought some local craft, I knew that I'd better arrive back home laden with gifts. At Leitner Jewelers, I was able to watch some of Namibia's famous gemstones being crafted into jewelry that would make any woman's mouth water. At Peltzhaushuber, I was shown some beautiful Karakul fur coats. Coats which are designed locally but exported worldwide. There was also a fabulous collection of leather goods. No doubt had my wife been with me, she would have wanted to return home looking like $1 million. Ah, well, just as well I know my limit. At Capricorn Souvenirs, I decided to buy a range of Bushman artifacts. The last night, it was off to the popular Furstenhof Hotel, where we ate in the country's most famous restaurant and whose game meal specialties are renowned. These were my friends. Friends whose bond of friendship had been extended to me. Friends whose love of their country had enriched my life. My last morning was spent at Trip Travel, checking to see that all my papers were in order, and once again I received the friendly help I'd come to expect of Namibians. A hallmark so many should emulate. I went through customs with a heavy heart. And as the aircraft thrust forward along the runway, brilliant flashes passed by me. The mighty trumpeter of the bush. The beauty of the people. The lonely guardians of the Namib. The adventure that became me. I had arrived not knowing, but I was leaving to return again. For this will always be an experience called Namibia.